Emphasize that. I like that, Jordan. Been a while, brother. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic NFL Live Before Lock Show, Showdown Edition. Chicago Bears, Seattle Seahawks. Gonna be a good one. I'm Dave Loughran, Alofi_D, LOUGHY_D, joined by, some may call him, actually, I coined this a couple weeks ago, was very happy to see our boy Neil Orfield carry the torch after it was passed. The preseason pioneer, Matt Gajewski himself, at Matt_Gajewski. What's going on, brother?
What an amazing nickname. Thank you. For
pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm doing great. My Chicago Bears play tonight. We might actually get a win because, it's preseason. Otherwise, I'm expecting like 2 in the regular season. So I'm excited to see what we have going on for the Bears. Some new players going to be on the field. Bayless Jones, maybe he was overdrafted. Maybe not. I guess we'll find out. But I'm excited to see it either way.
Who's your favorite Bears player, Matt, from that Super Bowl team when they went to the Super Bowl?
That's Alex Brown.
Yeah, that's of course. Yeah. Not Devin Hester or anybody else, right?
No, it's got to be Alex Brown.
It's got to be by far one of the best moments we've ever had on these shows, for sure.
I actually watched that video maybe like 2 weeks ago. It popped up in my feed again. Every time I do, it's just one of those like smack your forehead emojis.
Well, because he's sitting there like, dude, I'm right here. I'm right here.
Yeah, it was a tough scene.
To be fair, like Alex Brown's not going to be if we're being objective. If you're watching AB, we love you, man. But he's not going to be your favorite player on that team. Like,
especially like a little kid's favorite
player.
I
mean. That's what I mean. Like, oh, yeah, the edge rusher, the defensive end is my favorite. No, like Devin Hester. Of course, it's Devin Hester.
Yeah, I think the only defensive player I knew, or maybe two, like Charles Tillman and Brian Urlacher, probably just those two.
Yeah, right. But AB's our boy. He's going to hopefully be doing some shows with us again this year because those are always fun for some primetime showdown football. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. It feels good to be back in the chair. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. We got 30 likes. We got 250 people watching. Let's crank that through the roof. Appreciate all that. You want to join too? Hit that join down below. You'll see it right there. Get the free super chats each month, the custom emojis, the sweet badges. The badges is what it's all about that exclusivity and all the other good stuff. So let's dive into it, man. We got a showdown to talk about. Kind of a fun game. And John Jefferson said, thanks, boys, with the super chat already. John's our guy. Thanks, boys. Always bring joy to my day listening to you both. Also said, Dave, we still rolling with the Bears plus 3.5. Dude's got me up 3,100. That makes me happy. That makes me real happy to see that we're doing well. Check out all the betting videos over on the Odd Chopper channel. I'm doing them for every game, every single slate. We got you covered. We're trying to find every small edge that we can, Matt. That's what you got to do with the preseason. You make the projections for DFS.
Honestly, I think this is the hardest thing I do all year long just because of how much information changes on a day-to-day basis. There's so many little edges just following the beat reporters, knowing who's going to be on the field and for how long. And I mean, same edges that you're trying to uncover in the betting market. But for preseason, there's just so many little things that go into it. Like I had to change the projections essentially 3 minutes before the show because God bless his soul, Cody Main's on Twitter emailing the Seattle Seahawks beat reporter asking about Josh Johnson if he's going to play tonight. And now he is, but he's not a player that's been talked about whatsoever in practice reports this week. He's running back that's been hurt. He's definitely not going to make the roster, but allegedly he's healthy tonight and he's going to get a couple series and we need to know about it.
How silly is that? It's true. But the players that I find myself talking about, I never thought once ever I would be talking about them. Like Shane Buechele or whatever his name is for Kansas City.
Yeah. I mean, like we're talking about some really fringe roster players in these preseason, especially the showdowns, a lot of fringe players.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into that right now. Last thing on this though, Chris Karen, I produces many of our shows, had asked me when I did one the other day, it was like for 8 games. He's like, if that was 20 minutes are the regular season ones that you're going to do for every game going to be 45 minutes? It's like, no, because I can actually talk about stats. With this, you're not talking about stats. You're talking about narratives. You're talking about assumptions and guesswork, and you're trying to make the best educated guess you can. And in doing so, you have to figure out like all of the inner work. You find out what the coaches are saying, what the players are saying, what they did last year, what they did before that. It's tough, man. It's tough. But go ahead.
No, it definitely is. And I mean, like, even game to game, you see a ton of volatility with the preseason. Like, just looking last year compared to this year compared to the last 5 years, the scoring was, I'm sure you noticed this in your betting videos, the scoring was way up in preseason week 1 this year compared to the past. And that affects everything. Like, that affects the skill position players. It affects the defenses, which were super popular in the captain spot on all the showdowns. And then they scored on average 2.5 points less than the previous 5 seasons. So there's all these little ramifications from small changes that are happening throughout the preseason.
Dude, the average over under, the average total through the first 17 games, if you're including week 1 in the Hall of Fame game, was 33.7. The average total for week 2 is 40. The average actual total score in week 1 was 42.8, like almost 10 points higher than the average total. That's nuts.
Yeah. And if you look at the points scored on the field last week and including the Hall of Fame game, these teams together, these are combined totals we're talking. Combined 43.6 points scored over the last 5 years. That average was 31.2. So just wild scoring in week 1 of the preseason. And honestly, it's really hard to find an explanation because we're talking about small samples. Some teams play their starters more than others. Some didn't play their starters a snap, and we're still seeing these totals way up. So I'm not sure. I'm really excited to see if this is going to be a trend moving forward. I did change a little bit of my process to include some more skill position players in the captain spots. I was very heavy towards defense and kickers with mixed results in week 1, but I think the scoring outburst was largely the cause of that.
Yeah, it was nuts. So it affects DFS. It affects betting for sure. I don't want to overreact either. Someone told me I was overthinking all of this on one of the videos. It's like, I don't have enough data yet. I know we have seasons of data, but this was such an outrageously high scoring week that I'm not sure what to make of it, but we can talk about that in the show. Let's kick it off though. Just quickly, when it comes to showdown strategy for preseason, I know you and I talked about this the other day, but there's some people that are watching the show for the first time or some that just need a refresher. Is there any, if you had to say like 3 key points of building lineups in the preseason for a showdown slate, what would they be?
Yeah, number 1 is focus on playing time. That's what we're going to talk to you about today. From there, I think you need to be aware of just historical position averages. Throughout the preseason over the last 5 years, defense has been the highest scorer. Regardless of what happened last week, that's just been the case over the last 5 years. It's followed by kickers, then quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and tight ends. And for showdown slates, you're basically not considering tight ends whatsoever. A lot of the times when they're on the field, they're blocking. Unless you can find a unique receiving tight end, they're basically just a position I ignore. So generally speaking, outside of large field GPPs, I am prioritizing defenses, kickers, just because, and this is as long as your kicker is not in a battle. Those are the players that are going to see the field the entire game and get all the opportunities. Then it's quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers, obviously with a little bit of give and take if we can find some very narrow playing time.
All right. Love it. We're set. The table's set. Let's make it happen. So quarterback position. This one to me is really interesting tonight. I've actually been waiting to get your opinion on this because I have my own opinions. And dude, the truth is with preseason, like you and I might disagree with each other, but it doesn't necessarily, like, you have to have assumptions. You have to make assumptions in the preseason because guys like Pete Carroll are tight-lipped. You know, the Belichick's, a lot of these coaches, especially now, a lot of them are even more tight-lipped than they were before. Drew Lock was supposed to start for Seattle. Let's kick it off here. Drew Lock was supposed to start. So Geno was going to start the mock game, and then he was going to start week 1, which he did. And then Drew Lock was supposed to start this game. My guess is he probably would have played, a half maybe, or around that. Either way, he's not going to play because he's got COVID. So now Geno Smith comes in, and there's still somewhat of a battle. It looks like Geno's leading the battle to be the starting quarterback. But my question is, if Geno wasn't scheduled to start this game, but now he's starting, does Pete Carroll go, all right, you know what? Why don't I just see what I have in Jacob Eason and give him a ton of playing time and only play Geno for a quarter? Or do you think this is a half for each of them?
I was just going based on what the Seattle beats are presuming. And there seems to be a pretty decent consensus here that they're each just going to get a half.
Okay.
I think they can kind of use this time to evaluate Geno Smith, even if he wasn't going to play a full half in this game. Say Drew Lock starts and Drew Lock gets whatever it is, a quarter and a half, Geno gets a quarter and a half, and then you give Eason the rest. you can still give Geno that time and see what he has out there. Like Drew Lock's going to be back next week, and then maybe you allow him to start the third game and just narrowly change your plans. But overall, I think we're just presuming based on the beat reporters, like you said, Pete Carroll's tight-lipped. He's not going to tell you straight up, but they seem to have a pretty good grasp on the Seattle beat. So that's what I'm going with. And Geno Smith just being the slightly more efficient quarterback than Eason. Eason's like a practice squad caliber player. Geno's slightly more mobile too. I would rather play Geno Smith tonight, and the condensed playing time between them two, I think, makes him the quarterback one in the slate.
Okay. I think so too. I also think Eason's interesting though, because I wouldn't be shocked if he did get a lot of playing time just because maybe Pete Carroll doesn't want to play Geno for a full half. Now, again, it's just speculation, but I do think it's possible that Eason gets a lot of playing. I wouldn't put it this way. I wouldn't be shocked if Geno or if Jacob Eason plays more snaps than any other quarterback. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be better than Geno Smith, who's actually, to some extent, an NFL quarterback, could be a starting quarterback again. But I do think you could see Eason get a lot of playing time tonight.
I 100% agree with that. They're really closely projected for that reason. And you have a ton of upside with Eason, not only from the playing perspective, which you outlined. There's a chance he plays a little more than Geno Smith too, but he's also going to be playing against third and fourth stringers. So, know, there's a talent gap between these players, but there's also a talent gap in the defenses they'll be facing. Geno's going to have to go out there against like Kyler Gordon and some of these Bears highly drafted making their debuts. Eason's going to be facing guys that are going to be cut from the Chicago Bears roster. So I think that's a factor too. And just because there's a narrow projection edge towards Geno, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be playing Eason. And I honestly think you can play them in the same lineup if you're playing tournaments.
Steve McGee said Bears defense looked good. Yeah, I mean, last game out against the Chiefs, they looked fine. I mean, again, some of the quarterbacks that they were going up against were not great. Matt, I honestly, I had to like frenetically type out how to pronounce Steve Buechele or Shane Buechele, I think it is.
Yeah, that's it.
Like I just had no idea. I was like, it's Buechele. No idea, dude. And then you had what is it? Is it Dustin Crum or something like?
Oh yeah, it's Dustin Crum.
Dustin Crum, like Chad Henne's whatever, but Mahomes barely played, and then Chad Henne. This has been the case in the past too. Like Henne didn't play, so you saw most of this game played by Dustin Crum and Shane Buechele. So I don't want to put too much glory on the Chicago Bears defense just yet.
If I wasn't such a savage in these college football streets, watching Dustin Crum play every single week, I legitimately did that. He went to Kent State, so I know this guy very well.
Where did Buechele go?
He was a Texas product originally, and then he transferred to SMU.
Yeah, you're a sicko, for real. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah, man, it's lower level football at all costs, including like MAC football. But you're absolutely right. I mean, like facing Dustin Crum and Shane Buechele, maybe Shane Buechele will get kept around the roster. He played with Kansas City in the preseason last year, but Crum is going to get cut for sure. Like you might see Crum playing for, I don't know, the Birmingham Stallions next year or something like that. Like he's not going to make an NFL roster.
Yeah, and then news reports will go on to call him like a superstar USFL player, like they did with what's his name from
Kyle Sloter. He already got
Kyle
cut too.
Sloter for the Jags. Yeah, I said he had a phenomenal season. Like he had a negative touchdown to interception ratio and 6 yards per attempt. But there's a lot of these guys that just are not going to make it. Dustin Crum is what they call a camp quarterback, basically, just keeping the arms fresh for everyone else, right?
Yeah, and they've been doing that. They're basically give honestly Chad Henne more off days than they do Patrick Mahomes. Like this isn't anything to do with today's game, but they're giving him the day off in week 2 and Mahomes has to play.
I know, that's crazy.
I saw that too. They're like, yeah, Mahomes could play as much as like a quarter and a half. They're going to play past the first quarter, but Henne, no, he's getting a day off. He's not playing at all.
It's crazy. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Preseason's crazy. I'm learning a lot about it, man, doing these betting, a lot. From a betting standpoint, I've always enjoyed it. DFS though, I've been digging in more. Usually I just would go off of your information. Still do. Your projections are up there and you can get them for $5. Well worth it. 100% worth it. Use the promo code TUA, TUA, or just go to stokastic.com/promos and it's right there. And I'll tell you why, because soon we're going to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks has props, player props for all of this. And I'm looking over Matt's preseason projection. I would say, dude, even if it was just for Prize Picks alone, but also for DFS, his projections have, like, there are some that you have projected way higher or way lower than Prize Picks. Some really seemingly great spots. So even if you don't know a ton about the, preseason or some of these guys that you've never heard of and will never talk about before, using these preseason projections for DFS, using them for betting, using them for Prize Picks for $5, massive steal. Use the promo code TUA, TUA. Go to stokastic.com/promos, or just when you sign up and click that package, use the promo code TUA. $5, man. Well worth it. A million different ways to use these. And there is an edge in the preseason, despite what people may tell you. All right. Other side of this one. Eberflus said that they're going to play, the starters will play like 6 to 10 snaps. So are we in agreement? One drive?
Yeah, about there.
Okay. So around one drive. Then you have Trevor Siemian. You have Nathan 5 picks Peterman. It's nice, right?
Yeah, that was good.
All those picks came in one half, by the way. One half of football. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's a legendary half. I'll remember it till I die.
It was infamous, for sure. What do you make of these three guys tonight, and how do you see the playing time split up?
Yeah, I don't think you can play Fields because of everything you mentioned there. And then I think you will see a slight edge towards Siemian over Peterman. Again, if Peterman makes this team, he's going to be a practice squad guy. In their previous game, Siemian played 28 snaps to Peterman's 20. So this isn't a situation where Field comes out there monitoring the game and being like, all right, we got to get him exactly half. Trying to get a little longer of a look at Siemian. It appears, so I have a slight lean in his direction. I would still rank him third because you have basically a half guaranteed out of, or give or take, for Geno and his backup Jacob Eason. So that is how I would rank them. I'm probably not going below Siemian. There's just a bad floor with Peterman, and Fields isn't going to play enough.
So should we really just be targeting the Seattle or the Seattle quarterbacks for the most part?
In my lineups, I am playing a little Siemian. You could see him play like a half because Fields, let's just say he gets the one drive. That's going to be somewhere between the 6 to 10 snaps. And then you essentially have 3 3/4 quarters to work with. And I think Simeon's going to have a slight edge there. He's going to be playing with some better players. Again, he'll also be facing the better defense on the Seattle side. And Peterman, man, I think he plays like a quarter, but he's just been so bad, which is probably a personal bias I have, but he should probably be in consideration for GPPs. Again, 28 snaps for Siemian, 20 snaps for Peterman in the previous game.
Who's worse, Peterman or Ian Book?
Probably Ian Book.
Okay.
Pains me to say it. He went to Notre Dame. I love Ian Book, but probably Ian Book.
All right. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. Ian Book's on the slate tomorrow, so that should be fun. You want to talk running backs?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. And at the end of each position, I'm going to ask you who your, top options are there, just to break it down for people that don't necessarily or aren't able to catch everything here. And we got props. We got one for every position too. Some good ones today. A couple that your projections have wildly higher than the prop itself. So we'll see how that plays out. Chicago, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, who's pretty good, man. And he was really good last year, filling in Montgomery's stead while he was hurt. Tristan Ebner, Darrington Evans, DeMontre Tuggle. I mean, that's a name right there. And then Josh Johnson, so Josh Johnson's playing?
He is playing.
Okay, so we'll get to him. I just want to make sure. So we'll get to him once we get to Seattle. Let's start with Chicago, though. Who gets the most run here tonight? It's not Montgomery, obviously.
No, I don't even think he's going to play.
I don't think so either. Do you think Kmet plays, or is he not going to play either?
I think you might see Kmet play. They are playing their starters unless they're if they're banged up in any degree, they're not going to play. But Kmet's return to practice, I think he's far enough away from missing time that he'll play. It's going to be a few snaps, though. They played Darnell Mooney in their first game. If you were sitting your starters, like all of them, you wouldn't play Darnell Mooney. He's without a doubt your best player. So I think we might see Kmet, but I'm not expecting Montgomery. Probably not a ton of Khalil Herbert. Interestingly, they kind of split the backfield, at least the meaningful snaps, 3 ways in their first preseason game. Herbert at 18, Darrington Evans, he had 20 and Ebner had 19. So I think you might see a little less of Herbert today just because it seems like they're limiting the starters a little more. Again, week 1, Fields played 18 snaps. Now we're expecting 6 to 10. So I think we have a little pullback on all of these guys, including Mooney, including Montgomery, including Herbert. So if we look at who's going to play the most time here, I think it's between Ebner and Darrington Evans. These guys are basically vying for that old Tariq Cohen third down back role. Evans has never really gotten to show it in the NFL because he's been hurt, previously played with the Titans. Ebner's a rookie out of Baylor, and his job there was basically exclusively to catch passes on third downs and hurry up situations. He is a pretty good runner here, but interestingly, in the preseason game 1, it was Darrington Evans that caught all the passes. Again, small sample size. Each of them played combined 39 snaps. So I'm not really looking too much into that. Slight preference towards Evans based on the workload, but I think both of these backs are solid. Tuggle and then fullback Kari Blasingame are probably just going to take whatever's left in the fourth quarter with Nathan Peterman.
Darrington Evans led the team in targets in week 1.
Yeah, he had a really good workload.
Yeah. I mean, how many carries did he have? 7 or so?
I believe so. I can pull it up for you right now. Evans.
I know he had 5 targets.
Yeah, that was without a doubt the best.
And Evans, 7 carries. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't productive, but that's, like you said, for the preseason, that's a really good workload. All right. So favorite running backs for Chicago are Ebner and Evans.
Yeah, Darrington Evans is one, very, very slight. Again, he essentially had the same underlying metrics as Ebner, playing time, routes run. They were all almost identical. But Ebner, he was behind Evans in terms of the workload on the field. I do think that's a little volatile. I'll slightly prefer Evans, but mix and match if you're playing multiple lineups in GPPs for sure.
Okay. Let's look at the other side of this one, because last week, Rashad Penny was sidelined with an injury. I don't know if he would have played anyway, but you saw Ken Walker. Now, Ken Walker's sidelined and Rashad Penny's healthy. Rashad Penny came back to practice and just ripped off like a 40-yard touchdown. When this guy's healthy, he's pretty good. Pretty good. It's just not usually healthy. But Ken Walker, so for those of you that are wondering, Pete Carroll's like, yeah, he's dealing with a little hernia thing. That's what he called a little hernia thing. And then he's like, oh, well, you don't know the severity of it, but we'll hope to have him ready for week 1. And hernias are like ominous for running backs, especially. And then the next day they're like, yeah, he underwent a procedure, but it's not a hernia. So he's not playing, definitely not playing. Do you think Penny gets a drive or two?
I do think he gets a drive or two. I think the question is that significant enough to actually play him?
And so I don't think it is either. What I meant, I'm just trying for us to flesh out exactly what the workload looks like for all of the running backs.
Right. And I was going to get to this second. I think there's a risk that he doesn't play at all. Like he is coming back from an injury. Pete Carroll, very tight-lipped, didn't really mention anything of this. Beat reporters do think he's going to get out there for a little bit, but maybe he gets out there. He's a little tight during pregame warmups, and then Pete Carroll's like, all right, we're just not going to play you. So I think there is a little risk with Penny. Right now, we have him projected right around essentially like 12 snaps. It's like a drive and a half. So just know with him, you are running risk of him maybe not playing at all, which I think gives some kind of like inherent upside to the other backs.
So people in chat and Matt, I don't know if you had the beat writers put up. Some people are saying Penny is out tonight.
That was my fear. I don't have the beat reporters pulled up right now, but I will search it.
I mean, it would make sense for Penny not to play, especially given that Ken Walker could be out for a while too. So if that's the case, just keep Rashad Penny bubble wrapped at this point.
Sure. This is going to be a season where we play like DJ Dallas in week 15 again, isn't it?
Yep. But guess what? When Rashad Penny faces some of those easy matchups early in the season, I'll probably dabble a little bit.
Penny's out it's guaranteed.
Okay. Now, I also saw in chat, see, this is why preseason, you just got to be vigilant. That someone was saying that Geno's playing into the third, and then someone else said that Geno said he's prepared to play into the third, which is entirely different.
Yeah. I think we're going to leave him at a half for projection because that's what the beat reporters are saying. I mean, of course he's prepared to play into the third.
Right. Yeah.
He's prepared to play the whole game if he has
prepared to play to overtime. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that actually happen? I think is the question. And I think they're probably going to leave him to a half. What do they really gain playing him against the Bears third stringers? But I guess you really do never know. So we'll see, but we'll leave him at a half here. But you are right. And the chat is right. Whoever brought this up, there is upside with him. I also think there's upside with Eason. What if Geno plays really well in a quarter and a half of ball and they're like, all right, we saw everything we needed to with Geno. Time to pull him out, put Eason in there. That could happen as well, because as we've talked about with the running back position, this team is banged up.
Yeah. Awsastic said, head coach Pete Carroll told that Geno is prepared to play in the third quarter. Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah. Look,
he better be.
Exactly. Yeah. At halftime, they're in the locker room and he's like, Coach, I'm done. This is good, but I'm done. No, you're not going to do that. And again, like, this is good information. Don't get me wrong. I'm not shitting on you. Like, all this information is good, but Pete Carroll's like near the top of the list of coaches that just lies through his teeth, like Belichick, Carroll, Andy Reid. I feel like there's more and more of them every year.
I hate Andy Reid in preseason specifically.
Yes, I love Big Red, but in the preseason, you just can't trust a word he says. Last year, he said Mahomes was going to play the whole first quarter. He played one drive and attempted 2 passes and was done.
I remember that vividly.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Vividly.
So this just, like, if you're over on Prize Picks, by the way, you should be hitting this DJ Dallas prop now before they remove it or change it. It's at 36.5 yards, Matt. 30.
Yeah, I'm on the back end changing projections right now. So if you're using those, they'll be updated in 5-10 minutes. But just know DJ Dallas is projecting even better now when you take Rashad Penny out.
Yeah, well, you had him projected at like 70 yards or something before, or a lot of yards before that.
Yeah, and so then right after we talked, that was when the Josh Johnson news came in.
Right.
Adjusted it. He came back down. Now we get the Rashad Penny news. It's been a wild night for projections. These have updated like 5 times in the last hour. Now we get the Rashad Penny news. He's back up a little better than where he was too. So yeah, there's a pretty good gap here too.
So what do you have DJ Dallas at right now?
Right now he's still down a little bit with the Josh Johnson. We essentially had Josh Johnson projected at 0. Now his market share is decent. It's around 20-25%. So Dallas came down. He's at 48 yards, but there's still a considerable gap.
Yeah, 48 over 36.5. Prize Picks, use the promo code Stokastic, Stokastic. Get up to $100 deposit bonus when you sign up. Like, if you're going to do it, if you're trying to make some money, use the promo code. Get free money when you're doing it. The fact that they have preseason player props is awesome. And that we actually have preseason. What's that?
I can't believe it.
I know. I looked at it today as I was preparing for the show and I'm like, holy shit. It's not like they have all of them too. Not a million, but they have a lot, like receiving yards, rushing yards, passing yards, fantasy score, receptions, rushing plus receiving yards, pass plus rushing yards. It's sick. And you're building lineups with props. You can do 2, 3, 4, or 5. If you hit all 5, you 10x your entry. There's no sharks or optimizers or anything either, right? You're not playing against other people. It's a sick format. And the fact that you can do this, especially with our projections, is huge. Like, we're doing a DFS show right now. We're building DFS lineups, but we're also talking about the projections for these players. I mean, DJ Dallas is one of them. The one I really liked was Jacob Eason over 90 passing yards. I still think it's a half for each of these guys. And if that's the case, I think Eason can get over 90.5 for sure against 3rd and 4th stringers.
I agree with that 100%. Eason was the first one that stood out to me as well, just because he's not projected for a half on there. And you can see Geno's considerably higher. And I think if these guys were facing the same units, that would make sense. But again, he's playing against the second half guys. And we haven't talked about receiver yet. We'll get to some of these guys, but they're literally projecting 3rd and 4th stringers props out for all these players. It's unbelievable.
Who do you have? Give me the receiver you got.
Isaiah Coulter for the Chicago Bears. You know where he went to school?
Oh yeah, of course.
He went to Rhode Island.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, I think he's a great player tonight. He played a ton of snaps in the first game of the preseason, and he ran a lot of routes. He was out there for 37% of the Chicago Bears routes. The only player that had more than him was Simba Webster, And then you look at the overall target share, he was only behind Darrington Evans, interestingly enough, for targets. He just didn't really turn them into any production on the field. But he's battling for a roster spot. He's battling the likes of Daz Newsome, Simba Webster. He's going to play a lot tonight, and I think that's going to be the case throughout the preseason. So if you can hone in on these guys that are battling for roster spots, saw the targets already, are running the routes, playing the snaps, and maybe didn't get there in the first game of the preseason, this is one of those opportunities, and I think it's a perfect buying spot. He's at 16.5 yards, I believe. He projects over 20 in the back end.
Love it. Jordan, throw the link in for Prize Picks for Lance. He was asking about it. And yes, Lance, they do have an app. It's nice.
They have a slick app.
Yeah, real nice. Prizepicks.com or App Store, whatever. Just use the promo. Don't be dumb if you're going to do it. Use the promo code Stokastic, STOKASTIC, $100 deposit bonus when you sign up. Take the free money when they offer it to you. App Store, Google Play, prizepicks.com, wherever it is you want to do it. And it's not just football. They got a million different sports. You can cross them up too. All right. We got to get back to, we still got plenty of time here. Let's get back to the running backs then. Is DJ Dallas your favorite running back for the night?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Are you willing to play DJ Dallas and Travis Homer in the same lineup, or how are you building lineups with these guys? How do you prioritize them, and how many are you willing? I'm not talking about three, obviously, but like if there's two, which two are you willing to put in the same lineup now that we know Penny's out and Ken Walker we knew was going to be out?
Yeah, I think you want to prioritize DJ Dallas. He's going to get the work on the ground, and we know that's going to be there no matter what. I do think you need a little more negative game script for Travis Homer to be there. He's locked into his role. He's basically a third down receiving back. And if the Chicago Bears score early, maybe they coax that out of him a little more with Geno Smith. He's going to be playing like this is a real regular season game because they're evaluating him. So game script should be a little bit of a factor. Homer's not going to get as many carries on the ground, probably less likely to score a touchdown for that reason, which gives me a slight preference towards DJ Dallas. Any of those opportunities, goal line, he's going to be out there. And he has a little bit of pass catching upside himself. He's not going to see as many targets as Homer, but he can catch a few passes.
Yeah, Will, let me ask you this. If this week is also wildly high scoring, like averages in the 40s, are you going to have to adjust projections and adjust down on defenses for DFS?
Luckily, the projections use most of the Vegas data. So their scores have already come down a little bit just naturally. And, Vegas is kind of playing this middle ground. They don't seem to know what to do with it either. Now we're seeing the totals around 40 points, a little bit under, a little bit above for some of them, which is still below the average score last week. So I think they're kind of taking the same approach as us. We're going to see if this is a trend.
Okay. One more time, favorite running backs on both sides. Actually, not favorite running backs in order, combine both sides of this one.
DJ Dallas 1, Travis Homer 2, Darrington Evans 3, Tristan Ebner 4. I do think you can play a little bit of like toggle in GPPs, or if you're looking to the Seattle side, I think you can look to maybe some Darwin Thompson. They're not going to play as much, but they fall in the end zone. That's really all that matters at running back.
All right, wide receivers. Now, to make Jordan, I already hit on Prize Picks, so you can just keep that down. And we hit best bets already too. So it was Eason over, Coulter over, and DJ Dallas over there on Prize Picks. You ain't going to find those props elsewhere. To make life a little easier for our viewers, Matt, can you just tell us what receivers you don't expect to play tonight?
Yeah, let's start with Chicago. Byron Pringle, N'Keal Harry, Tajay Sharp, David Moore, Chris Fink. So that takes their normal 13-man receiving core down to 8. On the Seattle side,
that's pretty big though, right? That's pretty
big, yeah. Right? 8 receivers is great, very condensed, and we can talk about the nuances within it. For Seattle, you got a little bit of wiggle room here. So D. Eskridge and Marquise Goodwin for sure not going to play. Then you have the stars, DK Metcalf, Lockett, and Freddie Swain. Freddie Swain's not a star, but he is a starter, a locked-in starter for this team, plays in 3 wide receiver sets. If any of those are sitting, they're all sitting. So you kind of have this situation where you could have 10 players out there. That's assuming Lockett, Metcalf, and Swain play a little bit, or you could have 7. In either way, I think you're not seeing a lot of time out of Lockett, Metcalf, and Swain. So you're worst case scenario, you're working with 7.5 receivers just because they're going to get a drive or 2. Both are pretty narrow, and I think you should be playing receivers on each side for this showdown just because it is more condensed than normal.
So this makes it kind of fun because usually there's 10 or 11 receivers that we have to talk about. And then if the starters play a drive, but now You're looking like 7, 8 on either side. Let's talk about who we like most. I mean, is it Young? I know Coulter you like. Is it Newsome? There are some guys that are probably going to get a decent workload tonight, right?
Yeah. And for the Chicago Bears, you hit on a couple of the names already. I think right away, the players they're evaluating, there's kind of this battle for the wide receiver 6 spot and maybe 7 if they decide to keep that spot. Is Coulter, the player from Rhode Island, who saw a lot of opportunity in week 1. Simba Webster, who kind of plays a little bit of special teams for this team as well, or he at least can. He was the one that actually led the team in snaps and routes at the position. Wasn't really that fruitful in terms of DFS, but 29 snaps, 16 routes. And then Daz Newsome was drafted by this team, by the previous regime. 19 snaps, 8 routes for him. He's right in that Coulter range. Everybody else kind of leaves a little bit to be desired. They're going to play their starters less, so I don't think you see 18 snaps out of Darnell. Equinemius St. Brown's projected to start 17 snaps for him, probably not that many. And then Kevin Shaw, he's the only one on the back end. It's like him and Pettis. These guys are going to get cut. So I'm trying to focus on Coulter, Webster, and Daz for this team.
Okay. In that order? Or
yes.
Is there thin? Okay.
Coulter would be 1, Webster would be 2, Daz would be 3.
Yeah, because I'm looking, just looking at your projections here. Oh, actually, you just updated them, didn't you?
They're getting updated again. I got to take out David Montgomery.
Okay.
A lot of work on the back end today, guys.
I'll tell you what, though, dude, you're doing a seamless transition here from talking to adjusting these to looking at beat writers. I'm impressed for sure.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Are you trying for any correlation as far as wide receivers and quarterback goes? Normally, I know the answer would be no, but like if one of these quarterbacks plays a lot, do we look for that correlation, or is it still not a worthwhile endeavor?
Because we are expecting a couple of these guys to play more, I am a little more interested in it than normal, just because like Simeon might get a half, and then the Seattle guys, it probably doesn't matter which one you correlate them with for Seattle, but I am trying, if I'm playing like one of them in captain or something, I want Geno or Eason in the lineup.
Okay.
And for you guys asking in the chat, I saw some projection talk. 2 minutes, David Montgomery will be out.
Okay. For your updates. Again, promo code TUA, TUA, $5 projections, stokastic.com/promo. Promos, sorry. Well worth it. Well worth it. Is that for the whole preseason, or is that for this week?
I think it's the whole preseason. I'm not sure.
I think so too.
But
I think it's the whole preseason. So
it's an unbelievable offer.
It's an unbelievable offer. The amount of time Matt puts into these for $5. I mean, you'd be a dummy not to take advantage. Plus, you can follow along with us. It's well worth it. Hey, good question, Green Checkmark. We didn't talk enough about captains yet. So he said, "Are you comfortable with DJ Dow as a captain and Homer and flex?" I know your answer will be that's fine, but are you still looking to go, heavy defense or heavy kicker in the captain spot? Are there any spots that you like particularly more than others at captain today? Any positions?
I still love defense and kicker and captain. If you are doing that, you're kind of just banking on week 1 in the Hall of Fame game being a blip on the radar, which I kind of think it is. I mean, we have a 5-year sample of it being very low scoring in the preseason. So I'm going right back to it. I will say not with the same frequency I was in week 1. Week 1, I was very heavy on it. Over 50% of my lineups at defense captains, even in tournaments. I spread that out a little more, but honestly, not too much. I'm still going to be doing a lot of that.
People are asking about Bayless Jones, the old man, 3rd-round pick from Chicago.
He is really interesting. I'm kind of forcing him into some of my lineups, but I've seen differing reports coming out of Chicago. Some beat reporters think he's going to get evaluated. Some think he's going to get starter treatment, which I think kind of makes sense considering he's only practiced a couple times this year. So I don't think he has the same snap and route floor as Coulter, Daz, and Webster, but I think we're going to see a bit of him. And when he's out there, maybe it's that kind of Rondale Moore type role where sure, we get 15 snaps, but he gets 5 targets because they're like, all right, we need to evaluate him while we have him out here. So I do think he has upside and he's worth playing. Going to be more of a tournament play, but I do have a little bit of Bayless Jones.
And he is currently listed on the depth chart as their wide receiver 3.
That is true. And I think that makes sense tonight because Pringle's not playing. I honestly don't know if he's their wide receiver 3. And especially because like whoever made that depth chart, like he hasn't practiced at all in camp. Who, like, based on what made him the wide receiver 3 other than his draft capital?
Right. That he's a 3rd round. Do you think it's ESB?
ESB has been practicing in that capacity. And
right.
Do the Bears have the worst wide receiver core in football?
I'd say it's tied with the Texans.
I could see that.
Like Brandon Cooks. I love Brandon Cooks. Guy is wildly underrated every year. He has like one season without 1,000 yards in his last 7. But you have Brandon Cooks and you have Mooney. Who else do you have on these teams other than those guys?
Nico Collins is probably your next best receiver, but I mean, we're really splitting hairs. Right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, because we don't know if Mechie's any good.
Yeah, we don't.
Like he could be 2nd round draft capital. He could be, but as of now, it's Nico Collins.
Isn't that unbelievable? Crazy.
He can't be the 2nd. No, it's got to be Pringle.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I definitely won't fight you on it. I don't have a strong take here.
But like, how is Pringle with Fields and not Patrick Mahomes is the question.
That's going to be another great question.
So I don't know. All right. Seattle wide receivers. Let's do this. You don't expect any considerable amount of run from like Lockett or Metcalf or anybody?
I do not.
Okay. So we talked about this a little bit, just to close this one out. Do you think J-Jaw gets a lot of work?
He's not even in the player pool, which was interesting to me, but I think he's going to get a bit. It's funny. He came over pretty late in the week, so he's definitely not going to be acclimated to their system. But that's the thing with a lot of these guys.
But that made me wonder if they're going to want to evaluate him. You know,
that's what I think too. Especially if is he going to continue playing tight end? I think we might see like a Devin Funchess role. Devin Funchess just got hurt, but for Detroit in the first preseason game, he was essentially playing wide receiver. And, these guys that change positions, move from wide receiver to tight end, they're just going to be like your Kyle Pitts tight ends anyway, your move tight ends.
Right.
So I think he's going to be more of a wide receiver out there. And I think he gets a decent amount of run. But there's 2 guys I think they're really trying to evaluate. And we kind of saw that in the previous game that I've been honing in on more than others. And those 2 players are Derek Young and Bo Melton.
Is that how you pronounce his name? I was wondering.
I believe so.
Derek? Yeah, it's got to be.
I think so.
Got to be. Okay. You have them projected. Let's see here. We did update, right?
Yeah, there will be another one coming in like 2 seconds, but it's for David Montgomery. For the purposes of the Seattle, they won't.
Yeah. Okay, so as far as wide receivers go, you have Bo Melton and Derek Young as 1 and 2. Now, again, thin margins on some of these projections for obvious reasons, but you have them as the number 1 and number 2 projected receivers on the slate.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially if you don't think Swaim, Lockett, and Metcalf are going to be playing much, because then you're dealing with essentially 7 receivers for Seattle and 8 for Chicago.
Yeah. Okay. And hey, by the way, how many likes do we have here? 83. We're 17 away from 100. We got 500 people watching. Show some love. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Much appreciated. And we had a super chat from earlier that I missed. My apologies, Greg Kid. He said, took down a 20 max last weekend. Thanks to your analysis. Turned $1 into 200. That's awesome. Appreciate you guys. Hashtag preseason pioneer.
Awesome. Congrats, man. Congrats.
200 on a dollar. I mean, we'll take it all day. I don't know if you submitted it to the Stokastic Hall of Fame, but we'll get you up on the board, baby. We will induct you into the Stokastic Hall of Fame for sure. And we're over 100 likes. I knew we could count on you guys. Atoning for your sins right here in front of my very eyes. All right. Anything else you want to talk about at wide receiver?
I think you can get to some of these other guys for Seattle and GPPs. A couple names that I think you should be interested in. Penny Hart, I think he probably makes the roster, but he was out there for 33% of the routes. Cade Johnson, 39% of the routes. Aaron Fuller, 36%. Those would be the 3 GPP guys I look to, but focusing most of my attention on Bo Melton and Derek Young. For tight ends, you mentioned Arcega-Whiteside. They actually gave Colby Parkinson a decent amount of running, 15 routes. He's probably the only tight end I'm even thinking about considering. And with Colby Parkinson, it's still probably a bit of a stretch for me to get there.
Should we talk about tight ends?
I mean, I don't think so.
Okay. So even if you look at your projections, because obviously Matt's projecting everybody that he thinks is going to see the field, the highest projected tight ends at like 2.5 fantasy points. And that's just because it's Noah Fant and he's a starter and you're projecting him for like a drive probably.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Like what? One reception for, 15 or for however many yards. Yeah.
And today specifically, each team has 5. Like generally these teams have 1 on the field at a time. Sometimes there's 12 personnel sets, but when you do this roughly, like say like 105% of the routes, because there's 12 personnel between 5 tight ends, you're getting like 30% max if your guy's like a pure route running tight end. And that's what we have for both situations tonight. The math just like doesn't work out. And that's how you get 2-point projections for basically everybody.
That's shit. So I don't think there's anybody out there really worth talking about here. I think we can probably move on from this one. Now, in doing so, let's talk a little bit about the quarter or the defensive kicker. You already said, and we said totals, actual totals, not the over-under, right? The actual totals averaged 43 points last week. The over-unders, right? The betting totals were 33.7. So just a massive, massive disparity in actual scores compared to totals. And then Vegas made an adjustment this week. They adjusted up on average 6 points. Matt, they adjusted up on average a touchdown for the totals from last week, which is really insane. But you still want to go to some defenses here. We're still going to have some bad quarterbacking. What do you want to do with defenses? And on the kicker side, there's no competition. It's one kicker on each roster.
I'm still going to, and I mean, I think both defenses are certainly in play, but Seattle's the one I like just a little bit more. You're basically getting the whole game against Simeon and Peterman because Fields is only expected to play a drive, maybe 2. And then on the other side for Chicago, I still love Chicago, but you at least have a bit of time against Geno Smith. He's probably the worst starting quarterback or one of them in the NFL, but he is still a starting quarterback and he is better than both Simeon and Peterman.
Yep.
So to me, that is a bit of an edge, I think. It'll probably be reflected in ownership when you look at your contest, but you should definitely be taking a look at both defenses tonight. Seattle being the one preferred just slightly.
I mean, Peterson loves throwing picks. Or Peterman
loves throwing picks.
Yeah.
And the thing with the Bears, neither of those guys are runners. Like they're going to be back there taking sacks, throwing bad passes.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That's the thing. These guys aren't I think that mobility in the preseason definitely helps. Like you look at Bryce Perkins last week, you look at some of these guys that have some legs that can move around a little bit. That Atlanta game in week 1 with Ritter and Mariota, those guys can move. If they're willing to run in these games, it definitely helps. Not only helps them win or cover, but from a DFS perspective, mobile quarterbacks. Like, dude, did you see how many Bryce Perkins dropped back 25 times last game, but he only threw 17 times and he was only sacked once, which means he scrambled like 7 or 8 times in that game.
Yeah, Bryce Perkins is a pure wagon. Anytime he's on the slate, he should be a priority, especially because the Rams aren't ever playing their starters. Bryce Perkins gets like 70 snaps a game. He was like that at Virginia too. He's an awesome dual threat.
Matt, last season, he played the entire second and third game.
So you got to be ready to do those things. And Eason and Geno Smith better be ready tonight.
You got to be prepared. Like John Wolford's the second string quarterback, and he didn't play a single snap in the preseason last year, which is so weird.
Some of these coaches are like that, like giving Chad Henne the day off before Mahomes. That's how it is. I don't understand it, but we just got to roll with it.
Someone asked in chat, does Eason have a deep ball? Last preseason, he had 65 dropbacks. He attempted 62 passes, and 6 of them were deep balls. He was 3 for 6 for almost 100 yards. No touchdowns, but yeah, he was fine. He had adjusted completion percentage of 50% on those. So I don't know. Does he have a deep ball?
At one time, he was the number 5 player in the entire country coming out of high school. 5-star recruit, went to Georgia, flamed out, went to Washington, flamed out. I think he's still kind of getting reps based on his high school hype, and it's just not working.
If you guys have any questions, we got a couple minutes left. If you're putting some finishing touches on the lineups, we got you. We still got 3 minutes. I mean, Matt and I are prepared to go into the 8 o'clock hour, as Geno Smith would say. We're not, don't worry. But if you have any questions, we got you. Bro, change that name. It's so difficult to say. Osastic? Laffy, if the Browns are on the fringe of making the playoffs at week 12, do they keep whoever is their current starter or move to Watson? For sure. Dude's getting paid way too much money to watch Jacoby Brissett go out there and throw a game away.
They're going to move to Watson, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Kieran Doyle, Coulter or Bears D?
Bears D.
Green checkmark. Matt, what's for dinner?
I already ate some turkey.
Oh, okay. I had a turkey burger.
I'm living large.
People laugh at me for that. They say they're
turkey
gross.
burgers rock.
They're so good if you do it the right way. They really are.
I'm a big turkey burger guy.
I do it on a brioche. I get some.
Yes.
Yeah, right. I get some hamburger pickles too, like some good, the round pickles. Throw them on there. Little cat soup. We're in business, man.
You're out here doing it the right way.
Yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it that way, man. Best wager of the night, Eric asks. This is tough for me because the Hawks are laying a bunch of points. The Seahawks are laying a bunch of points, but I'm not convinced that Geno plays into the third quarter. I don't think Eason's very good. I don't think Simeon's good, but he's somebody that's started like 29 games in his career. So I think I'm actually going to take the points with Chicago. Matt, you got any other bets that you like, whether it's the total or the spread?
I've only laid the prize picks myself, but if I were placing a wager in this game, I would take the points too.
Take the points. Okay. Geno or DJ for captain in cash small field single entry?
Geno.
Okay. Here's a good one from Carlos. We're up against it, but do you think Darwin Thompson is a viable option?
Yes. And that's just based on like Seattle's getting really banged up playing their starters. Maybe Darwin plays a little more than we think. And even these playing time situations are volatile. It's not just the outcomes on the field. It's also, okay, maybe they don't play these guys as much.
Well, there it is, Matt. 8 o'clock. That's a fun show.
We did it.
Hey, are you doing the Saturday show too?
Yeah.
I'll be with you, man. I'm working Saturday.
I'm doing them all.
I know. I'm doing all the betting ones every day too. So that goes till Monday. We got a lot in store for us, dude.
Yeah, you're a beast doing all those betting videos.
I'm saying you have a lot in store as well. I'm talking about both of us going to Monday.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Going into Monday. So appreciate you guys. Odd Shopper channel, all of our betting stuff, baseball. Eric Linker's got some awesome videos. Ben, Aton, Greg. I got all the preseason stuff. Matt's got a lot of college football stuff coming out. That's the stuff you got to get in on right now. All of that. Fantasy Football channel, all the stuff here for the DFS channel. Shout out to Jordan Klein for producing the show. Find Matt _Gajewski, me at Laffy _D, LOUGHY _D. We'll see you back here tomorrow. We got live before lock, then we got it Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, all the way through the next few days. Peace.